Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Kepp, Editor-in-Chief and co-founder of From Day One, our forum on corporate values. Welcome. Today's webinar is about how AI teammates are transforming HR operations. Now, before we get started, for today's attendees, we have some complimentary VIP tickets available. It's for one of our virtual conferences on July 16th. It's about navigating the new landscape of employee benefit solutions. Well, what was once a fairly standard set of offerings has blossomed into myriad point solutions, many of them beneficial to workers, yet they create a daunting task for benefits leaders to evaluate and adopt them. With such an abundance of choice, what new approaches are benefits leaders taking to designing comprehensive benefits packages? I'm putting a link in the chat right now to access complimentary VIP tickets for that virtual conference. It includes access for the whole day's activities. Now, I hope to see you there. Today's session is about how AI teammates are transforming HR operations. For too long, HR teams have been bogged down in administrative work, managing shared inboxes, responding to routine questions, and handling repetitive requests. Well, what if your HR team had an AI teammate that could handle the administrative burden, giving your people more time to focus on what really matters? Today's webinar is presented with support from Wisq, and I'll tell you a bit about them. Wisq is the agentic HR platform for enterprises. Wisq built Harper, the world's first AI HR generalist, to transform the way HR operates. Now, before we get started, a few quick logistical items. This webinar is being recorded and it'll be available on demand soon after the event, so you can look out for an email in about 24 hours with the link. That email will also have info on how you can get professional development credits for this session from SHRM and HRCI. We'll have a written account of the conversation on our website at fromday1.com. And today, about 30 minutes into the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session, and we hope you'll submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, so today, let's meet our speakers. We'll be joined by Jim Barnett, the CEO and co-founder of Wisq. Interviewing him will be Emily McCrary-Ruiz-Esparza, a From Day One contributing editor who writes about business and the world of work. Her stories have appeared in The Economist, the BBC, Washington Post, Business Insider, and many others. She recently won a Virginia Press Association Award for Business and Financial Journalism. So, Emily, Jim, welcome, and please take it away.
Thanks, Steve. Jim, welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. Super excited to talk about my favorite topic.
Well, before I start asking you more questions about AI and HR and how AI is changing HR, Steve gave us an intro to Wisq. Why don't you give us an intro to yourself, a little bit about your career, what brings you to start this company, and then we'll get into the details of the tech.
Awesome. Well, what I love to do is build teams and brands and products, and I've spent the last few decades doing that. At my last company, Glint, we worked with the largest companies in the world with our employee engagement platform. And I'm now the CEO and one of the co-founders of Wisq. And I'm really excited because my personal life mission is to help people be happier and more successful at work. And so that's really what I've dedicated my career to.
Well, great. You're just the right person to be here then, because I'm sure everyone in our audience, that's on their list of things that they want to make sure they accomplish. Okay, so Jem, you've been at the center of a lot of major shifts in HR tech. Glenn, you mentioned LinkedIn. Now you've got Wisq. Why are you focusing on AI at this point? Obviously, it's topical. Everyone's using it. That's obvious. Why are you using it the way you're using it?
Yeah, really good question. So all the time I spent at Glint, and I spent a lot of time talking to customers. And whether it was our largest customers with hundreds of thousands of employees, or some of our smaller customers with only 1 or 2 thousand employees, I heard the same thing over and over, that the HR team was overwhelmed. They were getting a lot of pressure to improve the efficiency of the team. They were flooded with, as you said, tickets and a lot of repetitive tasks. And we really said to ourselves, like, how might we use AI to automate a lot of these non-strategic repetitive tasks, to automate HR service delivery. And it might be helpful if I just showed a couple of slides that can explain a little bit what I mean by that. So I am now sharing my screen, I think. So when I talk about service delivery, most companies have some model of service delivery that looks like something like this. They have a series of tiers, whether it's 3 tiers, 4 tiers, 5 tiers. But this 4 tier system is a very common form of the ideal state of service delivery. It starts with tier 0, which should be all self-serve, often a knowledge base or question and answer system of some sort. And that should be handling all the self-serve lower level needs of employees. And then tier 1 is the first line of defense, where you've got human HR generalists or HR coordinators answering generally transactional things. But they tend to be pretty repetitive things like time and attendance questions, leave of absence question, performance issues, etc. And then specialists in tier 2, compensation, recruiting, international issues, tax issues. And then tier 3 is the strategic, more strategic areas that, let's say, your HR business partners would focus on. So this is the ideal state that people would like to be in. But when we would talk to companies at Glint, when we were back at Glint, this is what we would hear. That in fact, the pyramid was flipped. That the bulk of their HR professional time, particularly their HR generalists, their HR coordinators, were spent actually doing things that are supposed to be tier 0. Employee behavior doesn't change. Maybe now they go to a ticketing system, but all the ticketing system does is route the same number of questions to the HR team. Much of what should be tier 0 moves up into tier 1. So the traditional model really has not worked very well due to all the problems around efficiency. So as Steve mentioned, we've got a very different point of view of what this can look like today, and how we can transform the way that HR operates and automate a lot of HR service delivery. So tier 0 should now be AI-powered self-serve. We actually now can answer 80% of employee requests using AI. Tier 1 should also be AI first. It's not AI only, but it should be AI first. We can now take out 80 or 90% of the work in things like policy compliance. Tier 2 should also be tier AI first. And tier 3 should be AI augmented. So, this is our vision of an agentic HR platform for enterprise teams. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and come back to you, Emily. So I hope that helps explain why at Wisq we felt there was an incredible opportunity to use AI to transform the way HR operates.
All right, I'm going to play HR specialist here for you for a moment. I see that and think, what's going to happen to my job? If there are a lot of tasks that HR has always had to do and will still continue to be responsible for. A lot of those tasks aren't evaporating, but it does look like something else is about to handle them. What do you have to say to an HR person who's thinking, AI looks like it could replace me?
Well, I think that's a really important topic, and particularly as people who are passionate about people and taking care of people, we have to have a dialogue about this. But there's no question that HR is going to both take over some responsibilities at some roles, but also enhance the ability of those roles to execute, to focus on the creative things, the truly human-centric things, the strategic things that people really wanted to work on to begin with. So there's no question there's going to be a shift. There are going to be some changes in roles. New roles are going to be created that we almost can't even conceptualize today. But net, there's going to be a very dramatic transformation of, I think, all jobs in companies today.
I want to talk about new roles later because I would like to get your take on what you think the future will be, but we will get there. Would you introduce us to Harper? Tell us who
Sure.
it is.
Thank you. I thought you'd never ask. So Harper is the world's first AI HR generalist. As Steve mentioned, what we're doing is automating HR service delivery. So that means we're doing things like enforcing policies autonomously, generating real-time intelligence for people. And Harper has a lot of the skills that an HR generalist would have today. She has skills today in certain areas like employee enablement. She can answer 80% of HR requests for information. Um, she can coach your teams on how to develop and grow and handle situations. She can handle policy automation and policy compliance. So when I say policy automation and policy compliance, I mean things like time and attendance issues, leave of absence requests, um, performance improvement plans, the things that HR teams spend a lot of time manually creating in repetitive actions. She can automate and take a lot of those repetitive tasks off their desks. She can also augment programs. So an example of that, we have a company, FICO's, one of our close customers. And one of the ways FICO uses Harper is to enhance their performance programs. So when people write reviews today, Harper sits alongside the individual writing that review and helps them write better performance reviews. Another example of that at FICO is that when people are writing their goals, their quarterly goals, well, they happen to use the SMART goals metric approach to creating goals, and Harper can actually help people write their goals and then make suggestions where, for example, the goal isn't specific or it's not time bound or isn't measurable. So those are some of the skills that Harper has today.
Why did you choose to give her a persona or an
Oh,
entity?
I love that question. We actually talked a lot about it. There were two reasons that we gave Harper a name and a likeness. The first reason is we wanted Harper to be approachable. We wanted people to think of Harper like a teammate because she is. She's an AI teammate. She's not a human teammate, but she's the future. She's a digital teammate. And in the future, we'll all be working with both humans and digital teammates. And so we wanted her to humanize her a little bit and make her feel approachable. That was the first one. The second one is we wanted people to be able to grasp what can Harper do for me more easily. So rather than sending out sort of that list of things that I just rattled off about what Harper can do, uh, if we say to someone, "Oh, well, Harper's an AI HR generalist," then people, "Oh, I get it. Harper can do all these things for me." So those are the two main reasons that we personified Harper.
Well, let's talk about then the kind of role that she might play on a team. What does an AI augmented HR team look like? Let's start with some of the problems that they solve. It sounds like baseline, the same problems that they're working on today, going to be able to do. What's sort of like the next tier problem that they're working on?
Well, let me give you a really good example. So we have a large manufacturing company. And when we were talking with them and onboarding them, one of the things they said to us was that 85% of their HR generalist time are spent in two areas: time and attendance and safety. And they asked, well, what if we could build a workflow that would automate a lot of time and attendance questions that managers have? So we did that and we automated that workflow. And today, managers come to Wisq when they have a time and attendance issue, and Wisq guides them through that process. And what we found is just under 50% of the time, Harper can just help the manager resolve that on their own. It's not ready yet for HR intervention. So, for example, it might be the first time somebody's been late, or they've been late twice, but they've never had any type of verbal warning or verbal discussion. So in about half the cases, Harper can just handle it by telling them it's not ready for any type of HR remediation and coach the manager through exactly what they can do or need to do. But in the other 50% of the time, there's an issue here. It's ready for some type of HR remediation. Harper takes the manager through the process of filling out the forms. It auto-populates what it can. And then the manager submits it to HR for HR review. So we keep a human in the loop to ensure that decisions are good. But in that particular case, we've taken 80% of the time that people would generally spend on time and attendance issues out of the equation. And we can handle them in off hours when the employee relations team may not be available as well.
Going back to your pyramid example with tier 3, I think it was, those AI augmented tasks. Give us another example of how, maybe the next level of thinking that an HR person would be able to do when augmented with someone like Harper.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a really good example. Performance is a really ripe area. Let's just take through a scenario. Let's say someone's about to write a performance review for an individual. They're about to give that individual a meets rating, let's say. And it turns out, though, actually 30 days ago, the individual had a conversation with Harper about all the problems they're having with this employee. So they're starting to write the performance review. They give it a meets, and all of a sudden Harper says to them, hey, wait a minute. I see that you're planning to give this individual a meets, but did you forget that, 30 days ago, we actually had a conversation where you expressed real concerns about this individual's ability to get their job done. So that's an example where AI can start to solve problems upstream before they become much bigger issues. But then you look at the continuum. So in that case, let's say that then they may give a needs improvement rating. It may lead to a conversation if somebody has a performance issue. But after a while, it may lead to a performance improvement plan, the need to craft a performance improvement plan. So that's another example of a workflow that Harper can do for teams. It can take the manager through the process of writing a well-crafted, thoughtful performance improvement plan that meets all the requirements and needs of an organization. That then allows the human being in the mix, the true HR generalist, to spend her or his time coaching the manager, coaching the employee, dealing with the problem, as opposed to spending literally 10 to 20 hours drafting, rewriting, researching the issue instead of dealing with, the sort of the more strategic people part of the equation.
Do you believe that with an AI augmented HR team, that there will be any tasks or procedures that simply just disappear altogether? Or is the augmentation really the important part?
Well, they'll definitely disappear from a human perspective. I mean, you can think of that example I used earlier of the manufacturing time and attendance scenario, where I said almost 50, I think it's 48% of the cases, those would have been conversations that HR would have entertained. Like, so essentially, that aspect of the job to be done disappears because the cases that weren't ripe for any type of decision go away. So certainly things will disappear and AI will just take care of it for you.
I want to remind our audience that in about 10 minutes, we'll take questions for Jim. So if you have any, put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I already see we have some coming in, so we should be able to get to a lot of these. So please keep putting them in there. Okay. When you're talking to clients or just folks in the industry, when you're talking to HR leaders who maybe are on the fence about whether they want to invite AI into their processes or maybe how, what are the concerns that you hear and then what do you say to them?
Yeah, well, it's changing rapidly. I would have said I'm shocked at how quickly things are moving, to be honest. We see technology trends that come and go, and this trend is happening so much faster than any trend I've ever experienced in my career. So the objections that we heard 6 months ago are falling to the wayside. I think almost all HR teams today realize this is an imperative. Like, either I bring AI to my team and my job, or my replacement's going to do it. I mean, this is an imperative. I mean, I don't mean to sound dramatic. It's not my style, but the change that's coming is dramatic and it's coming fast. So, that proverbial, the train has left the station. I mean, the train has left the station. And, if you're not on it already, you better run and figure out how to jump on it. And if you're standing there wondering, well, is this the right train? Maybe there's a better train. Maybe I should talk to IT about what train they'd recommend. It's like,
The trendy train.
yeah, the trendy train. Man, you better get on the train because you're gonna get left behind. It should be a major priority for all teams, all HR teams, to get AI into their service systems ASAP.
What do you believe the HR organization will look like 3 to 5 years from now? Earlier, you mentioned new roles. Could you talk about those too?
Well, I think you're gonna find, and it's not just HR, it's literally impacting all knowledge workers today, and it'll be all workers over time. There's just going to be a streamlined organization. We can just accomplish a lot more with fewer hours. And so I think what you're going to see is an HR organization that has AI or digital teammates as well as human teammates. And I think that the human teammates that will excel will be ones that are comfortable working with AI teammates. And I think we're all going to need to get a little bit more AI savvy and a little bit more technical, not highly technical, because the models are improving so quickly already. A year ago you had to be very sophisticated, perhaps, in how you did your prompts, and today you can be much more casual about how you do them. But I see a whole generation of HR human teammates that are very AI savvy and that are using AI on a daily, hourly. They don't even think. It's like not using a computer to the last generation. It's like they don't even perceive AI as different than software. It simply is what I do.
What about entry level roles in HR? I think a lot of industries are, or I'll say more specifically, a lot of young folks are looking around and wondering, where do I fit in the knowledge worker industry, the desk job industry, right? What about HR entry level roles? Are those going to be replaced realistically, or are folks going to have to be strategic a lot earlier in their careers?
I I think people will not only need to be more strategic, they'll be able to be more strategic. because of AI, will be doing a lot of the repetitive, non-strategic things. The entry-level roles are not going away. That's the next generation of great HR leaders. It's just the things that they'll be doing will be more creative, less repetitive, more strategic than historically what we've seen.
You have a lot of good Q&A questions coming in from the audience. Shall we jump into those?
Sure.
Okay. These are very tactical, some are more theoretical, so we'll do a nice mixture of both. Your first question comes from someone who's asking anonymously, and they write, how does Harper know what a company's policies are? Are they uploaded into the uploaded via the company's handbook? This person wants to know how she's integrated into the company so that Harper can answer questions right away, or does she have a ramp up time like a person might have?
Ah, no, luckily Harper does not have a ramp up time, but we do need to get your policies, your procedures, your values, your documentation up into Harper's memory. And the way we do that is we automate that through a file sharing system like SharePoint. And so it's all automated and continuous. So as soon as you make any changes to any of your policies, it automatically updates Harper and lets her know that there's been a change.
Okay, Julie wants to know, how can you ensure security with AI, specifically in HR? Of course, HR has access to a lot of personal information. So how do you do that?
That's a really good question. So security is at the core of everything we do. You think about back to our DNA. Our CTO Chipo Wen was CTO of Glint for the 7 years we were there together. And securing HR data is extremely expensive and extremely important. So it's a top priority for us. Following everything SOC 2, best-in-class security procedures. But I think the good thing about the question is, why do you need a separate HR system? How do you keep your data so that, you don't want every IT person seeing every performance improvement plan issue that's out there. So you really want to have a different system than your basic IT system. And I think one of the really good questions is when you think about security and accuracy, like how does a platform like Wisq differ than, say, allowing your team to use ChatGPT or Claude?
Mm.
And that's a question, a related question that we get a lot. And it's a really good question because we're very different animals. So when you think about Harper and Wisq, you should really be thinking about an AI teammate, not a search box for sort of generic health questions, right? We're an AI HR teammate. And so we're different for a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, we're trained, as you mentioned, Emily, we're trained on your policies, your values, your culture, your procedures, all of your documentation. Secondly, our models are fine-tuned using HR data. So again, very different. We're deeply embedded in your programs and your policies, so we can actually guide people in the process of executing all of the things that we've talked about earlier. Um, when we talk about sort of security or controls around things like hallucinations or what things Harper can talk about, we built this extensive system of guardrails that limit the things that Harper can talk about and allow companies to customize those things. So what's an example of that? Well, sexual harassment or discrimination. Generally, companies don't want Harper coaching employees on that. So if Harper gets a question like that, Harper knows exactly who to hand that off to. Or a question on safety. That would be another example where typically companies don't want Harper coaching people on safety, who to hand that off to. So those are some of the examples of how Harper is so different than just a large language model itself. I'd say like a large language model is sort of like part of an engine, and Wisq is like an entire airplane that gets you where you want to go to. It's a dramatically broader scope product and different product.
What you just brought up about topics like, for instance, sexual harassment or safety issues. I believe you've answered this question that I'm about to pose, but let me know if you'd like to elaborate. Someone wants to know if there's a way to create a workflow to include upper management when dealing with decisions needing human interaction. Sounds like the answer to that is yes, and it's up to the employer to identify those things. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can triage these things to whomever you'd like. So it's as simple as, let's say somebody goes into somebody asks Harper a question in Teams, and then they fill out a form or complete some type of exercise with Harper or workflow. You can escalate that to whoever you want. Like we have activity logs and case systems there where people log in to sort of read things and either approve them, uh, decline, or ask for more information. But you could also have the system automatically escalate that to a different person on your team.
Someone else wants to know, I think this is a really good question. Have you found that employees trust AI-powered responses as much as human ones?
Oh my God. It turns out that I love that question. This might be my favorite question of the day. It turns out, shockingly, the data is that they actually trust AI more than they trust human to answer their questions. Like people are actually afraid to go to HR and talk about a lot of topics with them. And shockingly, it turns out they actually are more trusting of AI than they are of humans in certain areas.
Someone wants to know about making the case for AI to executives. Obviously,
Mm.
this is going to take budget. There's going to be, change management that goes on. How do you equip them to make a really good case to the ones who hold the purse strings?
Well, that's also a really good question because the reality is for the ones that hold the purse strings, the reality is you're going to be saving the company a lot of money. Many of our customers, when they think about bringing Harper on board, the first thing they think about is improving the efficacy of their services. How do we improve the employee experience? But the second thing they talk about is how do we improve efficiency? And the reality is, often they'll look at HR generalist positions that are open today and realize, if they've got 10 HR generalist positions open, they can remove two of those and fully pay for the system. So ROI for a system like Harper is actually very high when you look at the number of hours that Harper saves HR teams. So from an ROI perspective, it should be a pretty easy sale to the finance team and the executive team. In terms of onboarding your organization, your team knows how to use AI today. Most people are using, um, you know, OpenAI, Claude, Gemini. It's just a matter of time before we go from it being 60, 70, 80% to 95% of all employees. So there's very little ramp up in terms of using Harper. They just go wherever they're currently doing their work, whether it's an email or Teams or Slack, and they can ask Harper a question on anything, and then Harper will figure out how to help you.
There were a couple questions about training on here. Do you help employers, construct a training regimen or plan for their teams to get up and running and using this?
We do. We have a customer success team that has best practices and we have presentations. But the reality is, your people are all using software all day long, and Wisq is dramatically easier to use than things like Workday. These kludgy last generation systems that are just insufferable. Interacting with AI is just so much easier.
Okay, I like this question. What kind of feedback mechanisms should be in place for AI use in HR?
Oh, I like that one too. So we We monitor the Harper's performance and results really carefully a bunch of different ways. One of the ways we do that is system metrics or evals, where we're scoring, Harper's relevance to make sure she's answering questions the right way. And we run these across, literally many hundreds of tests for every company to make sure that the accuracy is there. A second way that companies can measure the quality of Harper is the percentage of conversations that aren't escalated or don't lead to tickets. And we believe that over time, Harper should be able to answer 80% of employee questions or issues. The third thing is every conversation with Harper, you have the ability to give us feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, or report an issue. So we've got extensive reporting in the product. And then the last one, our companies give their employees NPS surveys and ask about satisfaction levels of Harper. And, so far the scores have come back extremely high. So yeah, quality is very important to us.
There have been several questions. You've already talked about ROI. They're keeping several questions about ROI and measuring success. You've already talked about, how many things don't become tickets, right? That's one measure. Hours saved is another measure that you mentioned. Any others that folks should be aware of, ways that they can gauge, whether their investment was worth it, and, I guess take that information back to the executives.
Well, there's some ROI that's actually really important, but it might be a little bit harder to measure. So we talked about performance improvement plans as an example of that. Making sure people are getting clear feedback so that you actually don't end up in a PIP, or making sure that PIPs are done in a timely manner so you significantly reduce your legal costs and your settlement costs from employees who weren't told that they had any performance issues and have now been terminated. So, I see significant legal costs being saved by Harper because you'll have much better compliance around policies and programs than you had in the past. Time and attendance is another good example. Um, uh, Sally or Steve was late again today, so I fired her. Wait, you fired her? Did you give her a verbal warning first? Did she have a written warning? Did you ask her why she was late? So I think what you're going to see is, systems like Wisq lead to dramatic cost savings in other areas, not just in terms of time for the HR team.
Can AI and Harper be used to track and report on HR KPIs in real time?
I think the answer is yes, but it depends upon which KPIs. I mean, if you're talking about time to hire, number of hires, speed and cost to hire, things like that, Harper just doesn't have access to that information. But if you look at things like ticket resolution, you look at the analytics that are available in Harper, you can see, oh, what are the topics that are being escalated? Oh my God, over the weekend, this was actually a scenario that was described to us by a prospective customer. Somebody had forgotten to renew the dental plan for the company. And over the weekend and for a couple of days, it was like 5 days later, they realized the ticket accumulation around no dental care. It was like, wow, that should be like a real-time alert that they should have gotten. So the analytics around what are people asking questions about? Oh, people are asking numerous questions around our performance program. Like, well, obviously our training in that area is insufficient, or our documentation's insufficient in that area. Things like running your policies through Harper, or Harper can spot issues with your policies where they might be conflict with each other, things like that. So yeah, there's a ton of opportunities for analytics, and yeah, I think we're just touching the surface of that today.
I'm sure that benefits team had a wonderful Monday when they returned.
Yeah, probably the person whose job it was to renew the dental benefits didn't have such a good Monday, but
Okay, we have a question from Gloria who is getting a little bit into the weeds, but I think could be extrapolated to other questions. Gloria wants to know if something like a 403B management, so that's like an annuity plan, is it Gloria writes that 403B management is very complicated due to so many variances per employee. I guess people could set it for different annuities. Can a 403B plan document, so something very tedious and tax heavy, be uploaded to be able to answer questions that employees and HR teams may have? So, like those really dense, heavy legalese documents.
yeah, the answer is yes. And by the way, I gave an example earlier of time and attendance. That's a very complex flow. It sounds simple, but there's actually a whole bunch of details around what level of seniority are they, what factory are they working in? The answer is different in Texas than it may be in California or Illinois. What country are they in? So, I think actually where AI thrives is in these complex policy questions that humans are actually more inclined to make errors on than AI is. So yes, Harper can be. We can either create a specialized workflow for that, or you could upload that into Harper, and Harper would be able to answer questions on that.
We'll go back to the example that you gave about those poor people who did not renew the dental plan. There was a lot of the same questions coming in. I'll just never forget that. This person wants to know if Harper can help HR teams identify trends or patterns in employee questions. Obviously, that's an acute problem, right? So,
Yeah,
can
Harper does that today
okay.
in our analytics. Yeah, we can tell you what are the themes that people are talking about. What are the themes that got resolved? What are the themes that didn't get resolved? What are the themes that Harper had to pass that through to somebody on? Why don't we have a policy on that, or why isn't that part of our knowledge base?
Okay. Folks are, wanting to know about budget, again, like taking it up to executives. Someone wants to know if a payroll manager can be an AI teammate.
Yeah, there's no question that payroll is going to be part of this. Obviously, there's certain areas like payrolls and benefits that are quite sensitive, like zero tolerance for errors on. And so, you need to make sure you've got human review of those things. But payroll is definitely an area where people want to make simple changes, and the ability for them to just talk to Harper and have Harper make changes. That's a common request from almost all of our customers.
I do want to ask you about some of the things that your customers have found. Someone wants to know if they've discovered any unexpected or unusual use cases after they've started using Harper.
I think the goals one comes to mind for me. We had one customer using the goals workflow, and they had said that they were using a particular metric approach for goals. And we said, well, let's have Harper look at all the goals across your entire organization and see what percent of them comply with that. It turned out less than 10% of their goals complied with that. So we've had some really interesting surprises like that, or policies that conflict, or policies that were incomplete that Harper was able to identify. But I don't think no particular weird use case that we've rolled out yet.
TBD, they will arrive.
Yes, they will arrive.
Some folks are asking about different integrations. Obviously,
Oh, yeah, good one. We haven't
already
talked
have like
about
HRIS
that.
platforms.
So,
Aaron is one of them, wants to know, you know, can it be used to help auto-populate corrective action language if it's housed in the HRIS system?
yes. Yeah, really good question. Yes, we want to auto-populate a lot of stuff by the conversations people have had with Harper, by what we take out of the HRIS system, et cetera. And then if you don't want Harper to be the system of record, it also has to be able to store any artifact or document back up in the HRIS system. We do all of that. So on the front end, the key integrations would be things like Teams, email, ticketing systems, and Slack. On the back end, it would be your HRI. On the front end, I guess it would also be, well, I guess on the back end, it would be your HRIS systems, Workday, SAP, Dayforce, etc. Your file integration systems like SharePoint, etc. So we're automatically taking your files and uploading them and keeping everything accurate.
Someone wants to know, an anonymous attendee, how to avoid over automating the HR function.
Well, that's an interesting question. Most people are in the opposite state. How do we start automating it? How do we avoid that's a thoughtful question. I think if we dehumanize it, we've over automated it. I think we can automate it and also keep it deeply human. That's one of the sort of the mantras we have inside at Wisq. Like HR should always be deeply human, but it can also be automated. And how do we find the balance between those two things? How do we enable people to spend their time on the deeply human things? The coaching, the counseling, the support, the mentoring. That's what we really want humans to continue to keep doing.
Yeah, I wonder if you find you're automating to the point where you're having less human contact. That might be a sign that it's gone too far. Would you agree?
I do. I think in some ways what we're hoping for is the opposite, more human contact. We're hoping to free up HR business partners and HR generalists from all the repetitive paperwork they need to do so they can be out talking to people and helping people and strategizing about, well, what's the organization's needs? What's the team's need? Planning your talent needs in the future and being a real strategic partner to the organization.
Okay, how about this one? What happens if Harper gives an incorrect response? How is that corrected or flagged?
Well, I talked about that already. So if it's an incorrect response that's flagged in the system, we'll get a notification for that.
Okay.
So we have that in built into Harper.
Okay. How about this one? How do you maintain empathy and emotional intelligence in AI-driven HR interactions? You talked about, obviously making sure we're having more human contact, but now we're augmenting with HR, empathy, emotional intelligence. How do we maintain that in our HR teams? And we'll use this question to wrap up.
Well, I think it's a deeply important question. It's not just HR teams as how do we as humans, how does humanity continue to have empathy and connection and consciousness and thoughtfulness? Uh, I don't think we will lose that. I mean, I think that's fundamentally who we are and what we were born to do and what we were created for. So, I think if we remember the important parts of connecting with each other and we make connection a priority at our companies, and as we just said, the real goal of AI is to automate the non-strategic, the non-human, the repetitive tasks, the more robotic things that people have to do to free us up actually to have that human connection that we all long for.
Well, Jen, thanks so much for enlightening us on your new product, but also the future of HR. This has been a nice way to spend 45 minutes.
Thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity to share Wisq with you.
I'll pass it back to Steve.
Thank you. Well, thank you both, Jim and Emily. Really helped us appreciate and understand what it's like to have an AI teammate and how it could change our lives. Thanks again to Wisq for their support and to all of you who participated today. Now, before you all sign off, I'm going to drop a link in the chat again to some complimentary VIP tickets for our virtual conference coming up on July 16th. It's about navigating the new landscape of employee benefit solutions. So on behalf of all my colleagues at From Day One, thanks for participating, everybody. Stay well and bye for now.